Hello and welcome to day 5 of Unsourced Christmas Carol-A-Thon. Today we're talking about one of the more weirder ones again, 1988's An All Dogs Christmas Carol, directed by Paul Sabella and Gary Salvaggio, and starring Steven Weber and Ernest Borgnine. This is a doozy of a film. One of the first adaptations of the story I ever saw, and it was either this or Muppets. The race between those in terms of my memories is really close, and I'm gonna admit it. They weren't altogether good memories. Whenever this movie would surface back up again in my subconscious, all I would remember is just this garish cacophony of noise and light that seared right into my brain. I only watched this movie like once, so burned right into my retinas. So I wasn't exactly excited about watching it again for this gimmick I'm doing, but maybe it would be better than I remembered. Now for some background, this is the final film of the All Dogs Go to Heaven trilogy, and it's also the series finale apparently of the All Dogs Go to Heaven animated series, which lasted a whopping 3 seasons, and that's incredible. I have not boned up on the All Dogs Go to Heaven lore, and I don't think you really need it. I've only ever seen the first movie once, and I think the film on its own right is pretty self-explanatory and self-contained. Some dogs are angels, some dogs are alive, some are demons, also it's Christmas. Let's get into it. First off, it's obviously a TV special / direct-to-video affair, so on the whole it has that sense of scale and quality. The animation is a little bit too loose to fit, and the overall sense of art design skews to a more practical sense of flat and simplistic aesthetics, which, isn't a bad thing. And the quality of production really isn't that starkly different from other cartoons at that time, and the worst visuals seem to get is that the audio doesn't really sync up correctly, or they just don't bother animating audio at all. But you're watching an All Dogs Christmas Carol, I don't know what else we're going to expect here. Now, despite my earlier joke about the lore, the movie doesn't require that much previous history of the franchise, at least not initially. Sure, it's a bit weird to see these talking dogs that wear clothes and some of them are like ghosts or something, and maybe not getting an immediate introduction to those characters can be a little bit jarring, but it's easy enough to understand through context clues and, basic exposition. It's not really even until a third of the way through the film that things from the show and previous movies start to creep in. But by that point, they're just perfunctory. The movie has already set down the main players by the time we get to the demon dog or the angel dog or the fact that these are ghosts. Speaking of which, one thing that makes an All Dogs Go to Heaven Christmas Carol such a trip to watch is that it involves demons and angels and heaven and, a literal hell. Which, with the more overt stakes for Dog Scrooge here, being that he will be damned for all eternity in hell until he changes his ways. Which I guess is always the case when it comes down to it in terms of Christmas carols and Scrooge, because he's always threatened with eternal punishment when Marley visits him. So I guess that's part of the lore of Christmas Carol. That's what Dickens wrote. But it does get an oddly evangelizing tone when you make it that overt that it's literally hell and not just like the metaphorical chains of his sins. But I just thought that was really funny. Now let's get into the main event, which I admit becomes a lot more heartening than you would expect because, well, it's about dogs. I'm not made of stone, I'm sorry. These are dogs. And so when you see things like the Christmas Past segment and how it's about the rough and tumble life of a puppy, it just, to quote Scrooge, it's like Niagara Falls. And that covers like the entire movie. I'm going to give this so much credit because it's about dogs and puppies. I mean, a puppy version of Tiny Tim. This movie does not play fair. Which is why I guess the All Dogs Go to Heaven franchise spanned 3 movies and a whole TV show. Dogs just have that effect. And yes, while the movie does continually go back and forth between that narrative and this really awkward destroy Christmas plot that evil demon dog is doing, which is just supremely wacky and involves a giant dog whistle from hell, it stays enough on track to keep being entertaining. And you see the present and the future segments, and they really do lean into the fact that these are about talking dogs and they play into that cutesy factor. And I have to say, that's really, I don't want to say clever, but it's smart of the production and the writers. They know exactly how to handle these segments about cute and cuddly characters that are doomed and about to die. And it just hits. It hits, because if I haven't already played the clip of Freddie Prinze Jr. talking about Scooby-Doo a dozen times already in this review, then I'm going to play it right now.
It was a talking dog, you know what I mean?
How else can you describe why this movie works in the way it does? And it does work. Before I get too off track, I also want to mention that this is a musical. The other movies were. I believe that the TV show was, which must have been really expensive given that that was a syndicated cartoon show and not a film. So you need to get like either new songs or they played the same song every episode. I'm not quite sure. I'm never going to watch that cartoon. Now the songs in this aren't great, but they're not terrible. and 1 or 2 are actually pretty catchy. Now, where the movie really does falter is that it is a short TV special that already has one new subplot too many, so a lot of things from the original story had to get axed, and it feels a lot more hollow as a result. There's no Nephew Fred, there's not a Fezziwig, there's not a bunch of anything. It's just really simplified. And if they had been able to like streamline some of these things into the film in some sort of clever way, like Scrooge does, or like even Last Train to Christmas did, I would rank this so much more higher, because it does contain a lot of that spirit that you require in a story, but without the characters to really explore it, it does feel like it's not really fulfilling its true potential, which, like I said, is a shame. Overall though, I had to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed it for what it is, which is this really weird cartoon tie-in to a franchise I have no familiarity with. And even then, I thought that it was able to do quite a good job at transplanting these characters into the Christmas Carol format in a way that, you know, was still entertaining to people who recognize what the All Dogs Go to Heaven franchise characters are, and also, of course, what the Christmas Carol should be. If that isn't impressive in some kind of really insane way, I don't know what is. Anyway, let me know what you think below. Have you seen this version? Are you going to see this version? Are you even familiar at all with the All Dogs Go to Heaven franchise? And if you have seen the cartoon, let me know. Do they play different songs every episode? Anyway, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and see you again next time for day number 6.